What's up, folks? It's VJ, the brother from the ancient mother, and you're watching The Headspace, Africa's most poignant hip-hop podcast, where we investigate and analyze the best and the worst of what's currently going on in the hip-hop culture, in the continent in particular, but the world in general. Now, project reviews. This project that I'm going to review is from an artist who, let's call him the former great white hope of Family Tree Entertainment. Caspanyo Versus label, left that label, kind of forged his own path, tried to set an identity for himself in the South African rap scene, and pretty much did. But for most things that were not even rap related, I think the most commendable, or commendable is not even the word, probably the most famous thing about Chad Da Don is the fact that he once dated Kelly Khumalo. So shout out to Kelly Khumalo. But Chad Da Don, an interesting rapper who is somewhat of an enigmatic figure when it comes to the essence of why he even raps in the first place. You know, there's people who jump on trends because they just can't help but solicit the attention that they know it would garner. And then there's people who feel like they are core backpack fans of rap. And I think Chad Da Don is a little bit of the two. You hear him rap and you hear an essence of enjoyment. This guy really believes in his ability. And I think that's a really cool element of any rapper. Just fundamentally, before you even kind of analyze the semantics and thematics of it all, confidence is the core. And Chad Da Don teams up with yet another OG of the game. Well, Chad is not necessarily an OG, but he's been at it a while. But he teams up with an OG of the game, the brother PDotO, whose project with Black Les we reviewed earlier on last year. Now, one thing about PDotO that has been super fascinating for me is his length and breadth at actively just trying everything. 2022 was a very busy year for PDotO. I mean, it feels like he did it all. It feels like he's in a time in his rap career where he's got nothing to lose, and he knows that because he's rapped for the love. He's expanded it and kind of garnered a name for himself in scenes where it matters. His home ground advantage being somewhat both sides, from hailing originally from the Eastern Cape, but kind of making a name for himself in Pretoria, but being respected in both corners. He's finding himself in a place where that all is coming into a poetic sense of fruition. He's always been a solid rapper in an age where Hype Magazine was giving us the inside info on the then Cap City scene. PDotO has lingered resiliently into today's climate, and it's very interesting to see him do so many different projects with fellow MCs in the game that really push him out of his comfort zone, because this is fundamentally a project that sonically the scope is very trap centered. So PDotO, Chad Da Don, they come together. The project is called Psalms 23. Now, for those who don't know your scripture, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, he leadeth me down, God's guidance. It's basically a scripture that alludes to the omnipotent protection that God has on you, me, all of us. And I suppose, poignantly, it's a scripture that speaks to the fact that everything is God's will, and thus whatever happens in the best interest of whatever ultimate power is lurking beneath, beyond, or around us. And I was trying to find how it conceptually anchors this project, other than being a kitschy title to gloss the project through. And I couldn't find it. I really can't see how any of what they're talking about here relates to the scripture. This is not even a spiritual project. They hardly even mention God. They don't even talk about the in-depth pursuit of trying to find out how this supposed protection can be proven, how this alleged divine guidance and providence from the Most High is evident in their lives. It is not referenced in this project at all. So for me, I just feel like Psalms 23 was a way to kind of call forth a sense of popularism using a very, well-known biblical scripture. But fortunately or unfortunately, it has nothing to do with any of that. What this project is actually about is brash self-indulgence. Chad Da Don and PDotO are rapping about nothing in particular, and there's a lane for that. There's a lane for just flexing for flexing's sake. A lot of these raps are alluding to greatness, rap supremacy, just vague little references and entendres that are basically not about anything in particular other than just how dope they both are. But as a result, the subject matter is not even the real crisis of the project. Number one, there's a number of things that don't quite make this project gel, and the first being Chad Da Don and PDotO have no actual chemistry. It feels like every song is more or less just a binary of Chad on one side and a P-Dot on the other, and they never quite make their raps weave together in the same way that PDotO was able to do with Black Les, where the camaraderie, where the touch and go, where the feeding off of each other's styles, where the conversation and dialogue is actively happening between both of these MCs. Here you see none of that. This is basically two rappers who each lay a verse on all of these songs and kind of move from two distant places, and that makes it extremely excruciating to listen to, because it just feels like you're listening to a whole bunch of songs that were made for the sake of experimentalism, and these guys don't actually have a core thread that brings them together conceptually as people. I mean, to even do this project, they probably get along to a certain extent. They might even be the best of friends. They might have an understanding about the business and the game that brought them together to do this, but stylistically, they're not able to live in the same place. It just doesn't make sense. There's so much of a sonic dissonance and even a cognitive dissonance where you as the listener just find yourself having to choose between one of the two. There's never a point where they both shine. And to be honest with you, most of the time, in fact, I'd go as far as saying all of the time, PDotO steals the show. I mean, PDotO is rapping his ass off here in ways that are interesting for somebody who's followed his career, because we know PDotO for basically being very golden era influenced, thriving on a floor which feels like Jay-Z pomp mixed with a little bit of Ross arrogance, grounded in that kind of South African warmth, that boom bellowing voice with that pseudo-American accent which manages to find itself in places that are local because it seeks local reference. But man, he's doing more than that. Yet again, he raps in isiXhosa, and I feel like PDot, you should really just release an album in isiXhosa just to fuck around and see what happens, because at this point it's so endearing to hear him and what it does to his voice. It feels like so much opens up, and on the track We Get By, he really takes the song and he brings it down to an emotional place. He speaks in ways that feel more reflective because it's in his own language, and he is able to really rap super comfortably on trap beats now. I mean, this is a far cry from the PDotO of the hype session days. This is PDotO reinvented. This is PDotO in a new chapter, and it's projects like these that make me feel like we just need a PDotO project. From everything we've seen with the features, with the collaboration projects, I think perhaps he is culminating towards something that can speak for a lot of this interesting new dynamic. But as I said, Chad Da Don basically isn't allowed here, and he is buried by PDotO's, quite frankly, superior dexterity as an MC. He knows how to spread his pockets in different places that make the flows a little bit more endearing to listen to than Chad. Chad kind of feels like he is regurgitating trap flows, saying the same things in the collective imagination that we're used to, using tropes, typical references, and as a result, it feels like you're just you're listening to this banality. So as a result, it doesn't push beyond anything mind-blowingly altering. It doesn't even create a point of interest. I feel like Chad locks himself in this place of mimicry, and it just sounds like derivative drivel. It isn't anything that is open to an imagination, which seeks to answer a lot of questions to an audience of what is it actually like to be a white rapper who was once affiliated with one of the best rappers who have kind of infiltrated the pop scene in our time. What is it like to be in the spotlight for formerly dating one of the most scandalous and talented women who has graced this land of South Africa, and just be in the middle of all of that? Chad has been in the politics of South Africa's music industry for so long, and he's given us no real nitty-gritty narratives of how he even got there to begin with. Makes me wonder, what is Chad Da Don's claim to fame? Does this guy come from money? Does he have really good connections? Because he's so devoid of actual talent that it makes me wonder what his calling card really is. And this is no offense, I just wonder. I wonder when people who consistently make projects that don't show any sense of real artistic endeavor remain. What's keeping them there? What's keeping them intact? I want to follow the money. But anyways, this project is kind of set together by the production of Shani J, and I think what this does is that it positions it in a modern context. It's very youthy, and that's weird because I feel like PDotO, being the age that he is thriving more than Chad, who was born in '93, which makes him a late millennial. So it really kind of feels like essentially two millennials funneling themselves into a younger generation, and that's the last thing for me, which doesn't quite make it authentic. As a result, all in all, this project doesn't speak to both of these artists' personal, direct, artistic place. It doesn't speak to any of their unique set of skills, and it just feels like a playful time in the studio that managed to become a project. And I think as a project, it really doesn't, for me, go beyond the 3.5 out of 10 mark. I really feel like the challenge with this project is that the production is not nearly as mind-blowing enough to take Chad's typical tropey raps further than they can go. And I think as interesting as it is to listen to PDotO reinvent himself, it still does sound like he's a bit out of pocket. Like he's an old guy who understands how to do the new tricks. But really, if he wants to amplify the essence of who he is, he's better off in a field that's closer to the kind of beats that they made with Black Les, where the pursuit to kind of modernize the sound is there, but it still remains in a place that's open and sparse and allows for the lyricism to shine, because fundamentally PDotO is a lyricist, and I think the need to feel jiggy also circumscribed him to a place where he can't show off the best of his ability. So for me, 3.5 out of 10, 4 on a good day. And I think with this project, they better have God on their side, because the creativity on this one is not. But shout out to SA Hip Hop, shout out to acts who consistently show us resilience, because I think we can learn a lot from cats who've been active for a while. There are many reasons why people are active for a while. A lot of the times it has to do with who they know, it has to do with where they're from and how they got into the game, and sometimes it actually has to do with the fact that they're undeniably creative, and therefore they always find a way to make the limitations work and to bridge themselves into new corners. All in all, it adds to the cultivating scene of South African hip hop, but I don't think that it's a project that will go anywhere beyond its immediate space and time. We're gonna forget this really soon, and it's not because these artists are forgettable, it's just because there was no chemistry and the creativity didn't ignite anything particularly new, and they relied too much on the formulaic tropes. My name is VJ, the brother from the ancient mother. You don't agree with me in this reviews, talk to me in the comment section. Engage. If I just sit here and talk about this music all day, it doesn't matter. I do this because I'm really interested to hear what your views are, and hopefully we spark a dialogue to grow South African, just global hip-hop in particular, centering around African identity, asking ourselves this constant question of how have we made hip-hop uniquely ours as Africans in this day in time. You're watching The Headspace. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Love you.